Everyone has a deck that they love, even if the deck isn't the greatest deck ever, and for me, that deck is Terabox. Terabox is a deck that I piloted to second place at an SPE. It's also a deck that I've won many tournaments with over in Japan, so it has done a lot for me. However, in recent times, I haven't really played the deck a lot, and every once in a while, I'll start playing the deck again and realize how much fun it is just to put it down a week later. But I've been playing it quite a bit in the past month, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. I think the deck is really strong, and also going to be getting stronger with the new Ascended Heroes set. And why do I say that? Well, one word. Pokeypad. Pokeypad is a great card. It's able to search your deck out for any non-rulebox Pokemon, and our engine is Noctowl, a non-rulebox Pokemon. So being able to grab Noctowl without having to use Ultra Ball and discard resources is incredibly strong. It means we can chain together more difficult combos with Noctowl for Pokeypad for another Noctowl, instead of having to grab Ultra Ball, like I said, to discard more resources. It also means we have extra outs to Noctowls. Beforehand, only having 4 Ultra Balls to get your Noctowl would be quite sketchy if you are down a few Ultra Balls and your opponent Ionoed you. Now with Pokeypad, your odds are higher. However, if you are on the streamer client like me, sometimes just draw into those Noctowls anyway. So we might be getting Iono to 1, and then from there we need to kind of find our way out of this. So yeah, he isn't taking a knockout. He's gonna just try and okay, well, I mean, this is probably gonna be the our last prize card is Mew, which is interesting. All right, we're just gonna top deck Noctowl though, so we're chilling. I mean, even energy isn't that bad because then we can get back into the Kanga. Yeah, but I mean, we're just gonna top deck Noctowl because I mean, streamer client, right, boys? Game's the game, right? Sometimes you just gotta play it. Yeah. So here is my current list going into the Ascended Heroes format. There is quite a few things that I wouldn't mind changing, but right now this is the list that I have settled on, and I think it is pretty strong. So the first thing I would like to say is that the 80 HP Hoothoot is really strong. I think moving forward it's going to be a lot better because beforehand some of these decks were playing Buddy Puffin, and the 80 HP Hoothoot just wasn't really great because, you know, if you prized a few of these Hootoots or you had these in your opening hand and you had a Buddy Puffin and you weren't able to search out your 80 HP Hoothoot, it just wasn't great. But now I think an 80 HP Hoothoot is actually really nice because against Dragapult it means they can't hold Lucha, ping 10 damage onto it, and then Phantom Dive 70 damage, or 60 damage to knock it out, leaving it on 10 HP. So the 80 HP Hoothoot I think is actually quite decent, and I'm not even gonna lie, I'm starting to consider swap to all 80 HP Hootoots post-rotation, because obviously Ditto is gone, and then you don't really have to retreat as much on your first turn. But that's the Hootoots, nothing really crazy. Obviously we have 4 Noctowls because Noctowl is the GOAT. Then the Fanrotom's just the standard 2. Then 2 Tealmask Ogerpon, and I think Tealmask Ogerpon is doing a lot more heavy lifting than he was beforehand. Not only is he a pseudo draw engine with Teal Dance, he has very many roles. The first role, like I said, pseudo draw engine, right? SDE, we'll just go with that. I think you can see that hopefully. 2, he is an energy acceleration, right? And this is something that is really important because if you take a look at a lot of our Pokemon, Energy Switch becomes a really strong card. So let's just see how many of our attackers we can actually Energy Switch a grass energy onto with using Teal Dance. So we can swap it onto Wellspring Ogerpon because 2 colors. We can swap it onto Pika because it requires a grass. We can swap it onto Terapagos because first attack is colorless, second attack requires a grass. We can swap it onto Kanga, all 3 colors. We can swap it onto Clefairies because it requires a colors. We can swap it onto Latias if we want to because it requires a colors. We can swap it onto Mew EX if we want to because it's all 3 colors, and we can also swap it onto Iron Leaves because it is an all grass and 1 colorless attack, even though you don't really have to swap it onto Iron Leaves because Iron Leaves has an ability that swaps energy onto itself already, and we can also swap it onto Pheasant Dibbly because all 3 colors. Well, if you look at that, all of our attackers, every single one of our attackers can be powered up by a Teal Dance and Energy Switch. So it is a very important card, and Energy Switch is just another very important card which I would not mind going up to 3 of, because like I said, Teal Dance is really good, and that's why we're playing 5 grass energy. And not only that, it is also a pretty decent attacker. So 1, we said it was a draw engine, 2, it is energy acceleration, and 3, it is a pretty solid attacker. For 3 energy, it does 120 damage, which, look, it's not the greatest number to hit, but if your opponent has any energy attached to it, right, then you're doing 150. And that number still doesn't sound great, but what are we usually attacking? With Teal Mask Ogerpon, Dark Pokemon. And Dark Pokemon are weak to Grass. So that means we're swinging 300 damage if they have 1 energy attached to it, right? Against Charizard, we're one-shotting it because they'll have 2 energy attached to it, so you can one-shot the Charizard. We can one-shot Absol because they'll usually have at least 1 energy attached to it. We can one-shot Zoroark because they'll usually have at least 1 energy attached to it. So it is a really strong attacker that can be powered up in a singular turn. That is why we are playing the Iron Leaves, because moving into next format, with Zoroark being such a powerful deck, Grass is a great typing to have. So Iron Leaves becomes a really, really strong attacker, and also it becomes a pivot option, right? For example, if we're playing against something that plays Clutch, meaning we can't retreat, then we can use Iron Leaves, use Rapid Vernier, bring it into the active position, grab an energy, and then manual retreat that energy into whatever else we need, and then bam, we've been able to just switch out of active using that ability. So very strong. Pikachu is just a great attacker into a lot of decks that don't have a good way to kind of like deal with it. For example, decks like Ceruledge, decks like Goldengo, they don't have a great way to deal with the Pikachu, and it just becomes a really, really strong card in a lot of those matchups. Same against like something like Kangaskhan, right? If we're playing against that, it is a really good attacker against those kinds of decks because it's able to just one-shot it and not leave any damage on board. People have been asking, well, what about the Light Orb, right? The Light Orb that lets Pikachu do plus 50 damage. I think that is not a bad tool, but the problem is the Pika, a lot of the times you are committing your crystal to the Pikachu, meaning you can't attach another tool to it. And not only that, it's only really good against these bigger attackers, and I would say against stuff like Charizard and Dragapult and Gardevoir, well, you're already one-shotting Gardevoir with Vitality Band on the Pikachu, and against Charizard and Dragapult, you're just not going to be attacking with Pikachu, rather Iron Leaves, Teal Mask Ogerpon, and against Dragapult, Clefairy or Mew EX. So the only real good like Pokemon you're going to be KOing with the Pikachu is Kangaskhan with a Stadium, right, in play, or a, what is that thing called, Bravery Charm, right? And in that case, I would rather be running something like a Tool Scrapper, because that'll help against more matchups, and you already have a Stadium out anyway. So Light Orb just isn't really my cup of tea. In fact, the Vitality Band, I think, gives a lot more value, because not only does it still give you an out to one-shot the Gardevoir with the Pikachu, it also makes your Wellspring Ogerpon a lot more valuable against any deck that is playing the Rocks engine, right? The Lunatone and Solrock, right? This engine is quite, you know, strong in decks like Ceruledge, decks like Goldengo, and the problem is with those Pokemon is that they have 110 HP, right? And the problem with that number is that Torrential Pump does 100 to the active, right? And 120 to the bench. So we can KO the benched one, but the active one survives on 10 HP, and that is a very major problem because against most of these decks, we want to be taking a 2-2-2 prize map. There is not a lot of decks where we don't want to be taking a 2-2-2 prize map, right? And Goldengo is definitely one of those decks where we need to be taking a 2-2-2 prize map, and usually that prize map requires us to go in with Wellspring Ogerpon and then close out the game with Pikachu EX, right? So definitely a very important thing in the beginning of the game is to make sure you can slap a Vitality Band onto your Wellspring Ogerpon and then force your opponent into something like a Goldengo, and then you will go into Pikachu, right? And start Pikachuing away and taking knockouts like that. And the nice thing about Pikachu is that it kind of functions as a pseudo one-prizer against these decks. I don't have a great way to deal with it because they essentially have to like attack it twice, right? They can't get rid of it in one turn. They can't ignore it because it'll just keep swinging for 300 every single turn, right? If you can just keep getting it set up. So the nice thing with the Pikachu is that if they pivot into a one-prize board state, you can just pivot yourself into one-prize board state. Basically, you can go into a Fan Rotom and attack into a Gimme Ghoul with a Fan Rotom Assault Landing and just take a knockout like that without benching another one-prizer. Without benching another two-prizer, and then once they finally deal with the Pikachu, they'll have to boss, or if they deal with the Fan Rotom, I mean, then you can attack with Pikachu again, right? Because you've probably put yourself back onto that, you know, prize map. Well, I mean, to be honest, if you've taken the first 2 prize cards with the Water Ogerpon, and then taken another 2 with the Pikachu, and they've gone back into a one prize board state, and you take a prize card with the Fan Rotom, you only need 1 more prize card, right? And usually you can just close out the game towards the end with something like a Terabox Unified Beatdown with a boss's orders, right? People might be saying, where is the Ursaluna, right? Ursaluna is a good Pokemon in Terabox usually, but for me, I have found it just not providing me with enough value. I don't think it's like as useful as it used to be right now. There's not a lot of games where I'm usually closing out with an Ursaluna, and honestly, I like a different bear, even though it's a kangaroo, the Kangaskhan, right? Kangaskhan saves me a lot of the time. There are so many games where I am going Fan Rotom into Ditto, and then Ditto into Mega Kangaskhan, just so I can draw like a bunch of cards in the beginning of the game, right? Because against Dragapult, having Kangaskhan in play is pretty good, right? When I'm able to just draw cards under item lock, I like that a lot. And then later on in the game, I can just Turo it up, right? It is a bit scary because it is a 3-pricer, so against decks like Goldengo, I don't usually go into the Mega Kangaskhan because it's very easy for our opponent to take advantage of that. But against decks like Gardevoir, against decks like Dragapult, it's very nice to just sometimes just get into a Mega Kangaskhan, use your run errand, draw a few extra cards, because if you use it on your first turn, you're getting +2 cards. On your next turn, when it comes into your turn, you get another +2 cards, and that's literally, for this Ditto, you've drawn 4 cards, right? So this Fan Rotom is letting you draw 4 cards, and then also getting you Hootoots and Noctowls. Usually you only want to do this if you already have a Hoothoot in hand. If you don't have a Hoothoot or a Noctowl in hand, and you have to go for the more common 2-1 Hoothoot and Noctowl off of the Fan Rotom, then, you know, so be it. But a lot of the times I will find myself still using like Ultra Ball or something just to get out the Kangaskhan. Kangaskhan is so good. And another thing is the Vitality Band gives us a lot more value with the Kangaskhan. So you'll see a lot of matchups. The Kangaskhan is the only thing that can actually tank a hit, right? It's beefy, 300 HP. Pika can tank a hit, but honestly the Kangaskhan is a little bit more useful to have in these kinds of games because its attack doesn't have to discard its energy, it doesn't have an awkward attack cost, and has a great ability with the draw engine. It's a basic Pokemon as well, so it can, you know, retrieve with Latias. So it has a lot of like utility, right? It is a very strong card. I was playing Badoo beforehand, but I think that having Mega Kangaskhan in the active during the early stages of the game just gives you more value because you want to piece together a lot of combos, and sometimes you'll just be missing combos by 1 or 2 cards, right? And obviously Noctowl can grab you any 2 cards, but if you run errand and draw into any of those cards that you were going to grab with Noctowl, it just opens up so many more possibilities, right? So it's really nice, because if you run errand into a Crispin, well, now you have 1 extra card that you can grab with Noctowl, right? A free card. Or sometimes you don't even have to use Noctowl. The amount of times that I'm sitting under item lock, and I'll be using Kangaskhan, and then once my opponent, you know, I take a knockout on the Badoo, and I'm no longer under item lock, and I don't even have to use Noctowl, right? I don't even have to go use Noctowl, grab these things, because I've already drawn into them with the Kangaskhan. And it is a really good attacker. With the Vitality Band, you're hitting 210 damage, being able to knock out stuff like Latias, like Fezandipiti, like opposing Ogerpons, right? It is a really solid attack as well. And sometimes you just gamble, right? And, I mean, I'm going to be uploading a gameplay video, and you'll see that sometimes this is your only out, and it works. Way too good sometimes, actually. Sometimes you just have to believe. Sometimes you just have to believe, brother. Every once in a while, you just have to believe. And today was one of those days where belief took us further than ever before. However, if he does have a Hawlucha, Rare Candy, Dusknoir, we do just lose. But that's besides the point. So, yeah, sometimes this deck just has to gamble, and being able to gamble sometimes, pretty good, right? So, yeah, Mega Kangaskhan, a great attacker at times. And also, if you do think about it, let's say we get Iono 2-1, right? We have 2 cards in hand after drawing for turn. If we have Mew in play, we can get +1, which means we have 3 cards in hand. Then we have Kangaskhan in play, means we can get another +2, which means we have 5 cards in hand. Then we can use Fezandipiti, which is a +3, means we have 8 cards in hand, right? From an Iono to 1, with these goofballs inactive and in play, we can draw up until 8, right? And usually you will find what you need off of those 8 cards, because 90% of the time you need either an Ultra Ball, either a Pokepad, either a Night Stretcher, or just a Noctowl itself, right? Or maybe just the boss or the Crispin or whatever you actually need to win the game, right? So drawing these cards is really, really good. So Terabox, in my opinion, has been getting a lot better, and I think it's just a really consistent deck, and it is a deck that I love because of the possibilities. Okay, Mr. Oppenheimer, it has endless possibilities, right? Like, it It's really good. It has answers to most of the format. When God of War rotates, this deck gets even better. And people might be saying, but a lot of our stuff rotates as well, like the Nest Balls, like the Mew EX, like the Ditto, like Turo Vessel. That's it. I guess Iron Leaves, I think, maybe? No, I think Iron Leaves is actually staying. Let me check. I think Iron leaves. I think he Iron Leaves. Right, H. He's staying. He's staying. It's G that's rotating. He's staying. Iron Leaves is staying. So we have most of our Pokemon are staying, right? And what will I be replacing with the Nest Balls? Well, honestly, probably more Pokepads and Terra Orbs, right? I think that's fair, to be honest. Turo leaves no replacement for that. Energy Vessel, Earthen Vessel leaves, we replace that with Energy Switch. And the deck is still good, right? In fact, Japan rotation has hit, and this deck is doing pretty good. We are currently seeing the revolution of Dragapult being, I guess, the terrestrialized in a way. It's becoming, you know, a more Noctowl-based deck. And Noctowl is just a great card. Like, I think I could say it's 100 billion times how broken Noctowl is. Jewel Seeker is such an insane ability. But yeah, it's a great card. And this deck has so many possibilities moving forward because you can just slap stuff into this deck, right? Crispin and Energy Switch with this guy still in format just means you can power up so many attackers. So whenever they print a really good basic attacker, we can slap it into this deck. And people might be saying, well, a lot of people are going to be playing answers to our Area Zero in the Team Rocket's Watchtower. Well, we can play Chiampao. Chiampao is a great card, I'll put it up on screen now, that when you bench it, you discard a stadium, right? And it's really good because we have a lot of answers to find it. We have the Ultra Balls, we have the Pokepads and stuff like that. We also usually will have 3 stadium outs. So Chiampao is a really good card that we can just grab. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it in the Dragapult video that I posted recently. But yeah, so if you guys enjoy Terabox, then I think the future is bright for this deck. I'm enjoying it a lot. I'll leave a link to my Discord down below. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed, smash like, smash subscribe, and I'll be seeing you guys soon.